Harry, you're a wizard. That infamous quote is not the only thing that's different about the Philosopher's Stone book compared to the film, and I have to say I think I prefer the film for this particular one. So I will say straight up that this video is going to contain spoilers if you've neither read nor seen the Philosopher's Stone. It may also contain spoilers for some of the future books as well, as I mentioned things back and forth. So if you haven't seen Harry Potter, please go and watch Harry Potter. It's a much better use of your time than watching this video, and I know I shouldn't say that, but let's face it, it's amazing. So I will talk about the other things that are different in a moment, but the thing that kind of struck me the most with this, which is not a problem, is that this is definitely a children's book, whereas the film is more of a family film, anybody can enjoy it. This is definitely written for children. There's a particular bit where they're mentioning which flavour of Bertie Bott's beans Harry got, and it's just listed, you know, he tried this, 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 this and this flavour, and that's a very childlike quality of listing these things that they can relate to or not. And there were times where I thought the writing style is very simplistic, but again it's hard to remember that this is not aimed at an adult audience. Something else that I noticed was really odd about this, and it's the same with the film. When there's the troll in the dungeon, although I've got to say Professor Quirrell's lines when he's like, "Troll in the dungeon," it's definitely the same in here, which was great. But when Hermione says that she thought she could go and tackle the troll by herself, and that's why Ron and Harry went looking for her, why didn't she just say, "I went to the toilet"? You know, that's a perfectly normal thing to do, and it's not going to lose points for Gryffindor, and that would still give Ron and Harry a genuine excuse to go looking for her, to save her, to warn her. So I thought that was a bit odd, that the fact that she had to tell this line. I don't really think it adds that much to the character. I guess, yes, it does sort of suggest that Hermione's willing to lie to save Ron and Harry, and then we have the beginning of this beautiful friendship. But it kind of felt a little bit forced. My only other issue with this book, and I have to be honest, had I never seen any of the Harry Potter films and I'd tried reading this for the first time, I probably would have been a bit like, this is not very good. And I think it's the pacing. There's too much time spent on certain aspects and not on the others, which for the most part is fine because it's quite colourful and still a lot of fun. But the ending, I have marked it, and I know I shouldn't dog-ear it, but I was on a train when I was reading it. That's the ending. So from that bit there, we have the Devil's Snare, we have the Wizard Chess, we have Harry's confrontation with Quirrell / Voldemort, and then we have the final award ceremony in the Great Hall at the end as well. So that all wraps up in, I think, less than 20 pages. The ending kind of begins on page 200 and the book finishes on page 222. So that's a little bit of a worry that they managed to wrap everything up, the most intense part of the story, in a very small time space. Having said that, it's still Harry Potter. I do still thoroughly enjoy reading it, but as I said, had I not seen the film, had I not been able to visualise these characters and think of the way that these lines are projected on screen, I don't think it would have been as good. So a couple of other differences that I thought were just worth mentioning, because it did make it a more interesting read to look out for these comparisons. In the list that Harry gets when he has to go to Diagon Alley to get his uniform, it says that witches and wizards need to wear black hats. I'm so thankful that they didn't wear black hats in the films, because I think it almost gives it a kind of gimmicky quality. It makes me think of things like The Worst Witch, which I love, but it's more of a stereotypical approach, whereas because they don't wear hats, I think it's a lot more believable because it makes it different and not cliche. Quite a big difference in the book is that he goes back to the Dursleys once Hagrid's taken him to Diagon Alley, whereas of course in the film he goes straight from Diagon Alley to platform 9 3/4. I think had he gone back to the Dursleys it would have been a bit too much for the film. It also would have taken too much film time, too much screen time to actually get to Hogwarts. So I think they did really well to omit that from the film. Something else that's different, that is not important in the slightest, but it just kind of made me think, oh, I wonder why they changed that. In the film, Harry's broomstick arrives on the table and you can tell it's a broomstick. In the book, there's a note attached to the parcel saying, please don't open this at the table because we don't want anybody else to know you've been given a broomstick. So I just thought it definitely worked better to have that visual aid of this wrapped broomstick. And the last thing that I noticed that was significantly different, and this is a bit of an upsetting one, is when they're learning Wingardium Leviosa. Now Hermione does correct Ron, but she says it's Wingardium Leviosa, you've got to lengthen the gar. And that's definitely not as catchy as it's Leviosa, not Leviosa. So, forgive my dodgy impressions. So that was a lot different. But obviously it's not meant to be a mirror image when a book is adapted to films. It's not line for line, quote for quote. But obviously when we've become so used to these really iconic bits of dialogue, when you read them in the book afterwards, it's kind of like, ah. So really all I want is for them to republish this, and I never advocate republishing this book because it's a huge cash cow these days, but I kind of want them to republish it and at least change those two quotes to "You're a wizard, Harry," and it's Leviosa, not Leviosa. So as I think I've made abundantly clear on this occasion with this particular Potter book, definitely preferred the film. Had I read this without ever seeing the films, I may never have got around to seeing the films at all because it's actually not perfect. Do let me know whether you prefer the book or the film. I will be comparing all of the books at some point with all of the films. Let me know your thoughts and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye!